This is the second in my series of videos on progressive racism, and this one took place back in the 1980s, late 1980s. I was working in Washington for the Navy. I was working on Mediterranean and Middle East. I was writing a book that never got finished, A History of the Sixth Fleet, and a history of a book that did get finished, which was a history of the U.S. Navy in the Persian Gulf, up to 1988, which I did finish and complete. And I used to belong to this book club where we went and we would, we'd have a speaker and they'd review a book. And I think it started at 7, and at 6 o'clock we'd have a cocktail hour, and they had a cash bar, and there were, a few things you could get. And basically you could go and socialize and meet people outside of whatever agency you worked for. You could meet people. I worked for the Navy. You could meet people from the Army, the Marine Corps, worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, State Department, Agriculture, whomever. And it was pretty interesting. And usually the speakers were pretty good. And we met once a month. You paid, a bit for dinner. And you get to know some people, not just people in your own activity, but people around Washington. And there was one guy I had gotten to know who didn't work for the government. He actually worked for I won't name which university, but it was a major university in the Washington, D.C. area. And he was a full professor of history. And he was a very, liberal kind of guy. He was far to the left of me. And we used to have some interesting conversations. I mean, perfectly civil conversations. We got along. We'd eat dinner together every now and then, especially if, none of the people from my activity went. And he knew I worked on the Mediterranean and Middle East, which would include Israel and Israeli-related, aspects of what goes on there. And, we would have discussions about whatever, something in the news happened that involved Israel, the Palestinians, the Syrians, the Egyptians, any of the frontline states. And I forget what had happened. But we started having this discussion. Now, our discussions were usually, I would be pretty much pro-Israel, and he was almost always anti-Israel. Now, I never, read into that anything. I mean, there were plenty of people I knew who were less pro-Israel than I was. I know people who were Jewish who were less pro-Israel than I was. So that didn't throw me at all. But this particular night, the speaker was delayed. So instead of the meeting starting at 7, it was he didn't get there almost at 8 o'clock. It was almost an hour late. So they kept the cash bar open, and my friend and I kept drinking. And we kept having this conversation. We've been locked in for quite a while about whatever that just had happened in the Middle East. And let's just say he didn't appear to be holding his booze as well as I was, or maybe he was drinking faster, I'm not sure which. But suddenly his words started to slur a little bit, and it was clear he was, taking in a little too much for himself. Maybe he hadn't eaten in a long time. I don't know his story. But he started showing signs of being drunk. And suddenly, and remarkably to me, our conversation took a big change. So instead of me being pro-Israel and him being anti-Israel, I was pro-Israel and he was anti-Jewish. Instead of saying the Israelis did this and the Israelis did that, now suddenly it was the damn Jews. The Jews do this, the Jews do that, the Jews get away with this, the Jews get away with that, the Jews control the banks, the Jews control the American media. The Jews control the government, the Jews do this, the Jews do that. And I'm just sitting there listening to this guy, and I thought, I got it. Yeah, he's been anti-Israeli all the way, but I never thought he was an anti-Semite, but he obviously was. And here was a guy who was a full professor at a major DC area university, teaching history, teaching children, teaching young people, and he was an anti-Semite. I mean, there's no two ways about it. So I just said, I quickly downed my drink, so I had an excuse to leave, and I said I got to get another one. Went to the bar, got another drink, and on my way back, ran into somebody else I know, so I didn't have to go back to the table. I don't think we ever spoke again. We occasionally see each other and we'd nod, but that was about it. I never had another conversation with him because I had really no desire to interact with him. I didn't, I guess today, if I was a progressive, I'd call his university and say, you got an anti-Semite there. Uh, Although today he'd probably get promoted or something. But I didn't do anything about it. I didn't say anything to anybody, but I just avoided him from there on in after that, and broke off all connections with him. But I guess it was the first time I'd ever seen that. I mean, I'd seen that on the street. I'd seen that on from people who you meet, or even some of your friends maybe, but I'd never seen it from a full professor at a major university. And it sort of shook me that somebody with his views might actually be teaching. And then, of course, when I got my own job, I found out that, yeah, indeed there are. There are more of them out there than that. And they are teaching our students, and I see it in some of our students. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you know when I post new videos. And until the next time, I am out of here.